Alina sighed as she looked at the mountain of paperwork sitting on her desk at the Adventurers Guild. Her dream was a simple life with a stable income and no overtime, but the world had other plans. Whenever an adventurer failed to defeat a boss, the resulting bureaucratic mess forced her to stay late. To save her own sanity, she secretly took matters into her own hands by hunting the bosses herself. Deep within the underground ruins, the elite Silver Sword Party found themselves cornered by a massive fire dragon. Jade commanded his team to hold the line, but the dragon's scales were far too thick for their weapons. Suddenly, a hooded figure stepped out of the shadows, wielding a warhammer that pulsed with ancient energy. Alina didn't care about glory, she just wanted to finish this boss so she could go home on time. With a single earth-shattering strike, she crushed the dragon's skull and ended the battle instantly. Jade watched in disbelief as the mysterious executioner turned and vanished before he could say a word. The next morning, Alina was back at her station, greeting adventurers with her standard, practiced smile. However, her heart skipped a beat when Jade walked straight toward her counter with a piercing gaze. He told her that he had seen her face in the ruins and knew she was the executioner. Alina tried to play dumb, but the internal fear of losing her stable job was overwhelming. She led him to a secluded area and threatened him with her hammer to keep her secret safe. Instead of being afraid, Jade was fascinated by the incredible Dia skills she possessed. He explained that her powers were legendary and should have disappeared with the ancient civilization. Alina countered that she didn't care about legends, she only cared about her credit score and her mortgage. Jade realized he couldn't let such a talent go to waste and decided to recruit her for his party. Meanwhile, a new problem arose as a rogue adventurer named Slay began causing chaos in the city. When Slay's golem accidentally destroyed Alina's house, her patience finally reached its absolute limit. She marched into the town square, her aura flaring with a terrifying golden light. The golem was massive, but Alina's rage made it look like a mere pebble in her path. Slay watched in horror as his ultimate weapon was dismantled by a receptionist in a work skirt. She warned him never to mess with a working adult's precious home ever again. With her house gone, Alina felt like she had lost her only place of healing after a long shift. Jade approached her and offered a room at the Silver Sword Inn until her home could be repaired. She initially refused, but the reality of her situation eventually forced her to accept his help. Little did they know, the guild master Glenn had been watching the entire battle from his office. Glenn realized that the legendary executioner was finally within his reach. The next day, Alina found Jade helping her with her morning paperwork, much to her surprise. She found his perfectionism irritating, but she couldn't deny that he was a fast learner. During their work, they discovered a hidden message inside a relic dropped by the dragon. It was a secret quest invitation to the Chalk Tower, a place long thought to be a myth. Alina knew that a new dungeon meant more adventurers and even more overtime for her. Glenn suddenly appeared and summoned her to the guild headquarters for a private meeting. She was certain she was about to be fired for using guild resources for her secret missions. To her shock, Glenn challenged her to a duel right then and there on the training grounds. He promised that if she won, he would leave her alone and ensure her job remained secure. Alina accepted the challenge, ready to fight for her right to a peaceful, overtime-free career. Glenn used his legendary ability to stop time, freezing everything in the arena into a standstill. However, Alina's Dia skill was so potent that she smashed through the time barrier with raw strength. Glenn admitted defeat, realizing that her power was even greater than the ancient records suggested. He then revealed his true intention: he needed her help to clear the Chalk Tower and its dangerous bosses. Alina initially refused, but Glenn offered a reward she simply couldn't ignore. He promised to double the number of receptionists at the guild counter, effectively cutting her workload in half. Driven by the dream of a work-life balance, Alina officially joined forces with the Silver Sword. As they prepared for the journey, a sense of foreboding hung over the guild. Alina packed her things, wondering if she would ever truly escape the cycle of overtime. Regardless of the danger, she would crush anything that stood between her and her weekend off. The morning sun filtered through the guild's stained glass windows, but Alina felt no warmth as she stared at the official summons on her desk. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her glasses, wondering if anyone had seen her swinging that massive hammer in the dungeon last night. Jade stood by the pillar nearby, his arms crossed, and his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that suggested he knew everything. She walked toward the guildmaster's private office, the click of her heels echoing like a countdown to her unemployment. The heavy oak doors creaked open to reveal Guildmaster Glenn, a man whose smile never quite reached his calculating eyes. Without looking up from his ledger, Glenn mentioned that the dragon in the fourth stratum had been obliterated by a most unusual weapon. Alina attempted to feign ignorance, claiming she had been busy filing expense reports during the time of the incident. Glenn placed a shattered piece of her distinctive hammerhead on the desk, effectively ending her charade. Realizing she was caught, Alina slumped her shoulders and asked if she was going to be fired for violating the guild's employee neutrality pact. Glenn chuckled and explained that her unique talents were far too valuable for a mere pink slip. He pulled out a dusty map of the Chalk Tower, an ancient structure that had been sealed for centuries. Reports from the scouts indicated that the seal holding the dark god Scylla was beginning to fracture from within. Alina argued that preventing a god's revival sounded like a lot of unpaid overtime. Glenn offered her a deal: complete this mission, and she would receive a full year of paid vacation and a complete wipe of her disciplinary record. The thought of 365 days without a single spreadsheet made Alina's resolve crumble instantly. She accepted the mission on the condition that Jade and the Silver Sword Party would not interfere with her executioner duties. Glenn informed her that Jade was already waiting outside, as he had been appointed as her official handler for the journey. Alina marched out of the office to find Jade checking the sharpness of his blade with a smirk. Jade remarked that he was looking forward to seeing the executioner in action without the clerical disguise. Alina ignored him, instead checking her bag to ensure she had enough ink and pens for any mid-adventure paperwork. They departed the guild under the cover of dusk, heading toward the jagged peaks where the Chalk Tower stood. The environment around the tower was warped, with white trees growing in impossible geometric patterns. Jade sensed a presence and drew his sword, signaling Alina to prepare for combat. A group of crystalline golems emerged from the shadows, their eyes glowing with a malevolent purple light. Alina sighed, pulled off her receptionist jacket, and reached into her pocket dimension bag for her massive hammer. With a single overhead swing, she shattered the first golem into 1,000 glittering shards. Jade watched in awe as the fragile receptionist moved with the speed and precision of a seasoned godslayer. She didn't stop, spinning the hammer in a devastating whirlwind that cleared a path to the tower's entrance. As the last golem fell, she checked her watch and noted they were 5 minutes ahead of schedule. They entered the tower, finding the interior walls covered in ancient Dia script that hummed with a low vibrating frequency. Alina recognized the script as a containment ritual, one designed to drain the life force of anything inside. She wondered why the guildmaster hadn't mentioned that the tower itself was a giant magical trap. Suddenly, the floor beneath them turned into a liquid-like substance, pulling them down into a lower chamber. They landed in a vast underground cathedral where a pulsing black core hung suspended in mid-air. This was the heart of Scylla, the dark god that was supposed to be sealed far above them. A ghostly image of Glenn appeared before them, his face distorted by the dark energy of the core. Glenn thanked them for bringing the key, referring to the Dia skills Alina possessed, to the very center of the ritual. Alina realized that the vacation offer was a lie, and she was merely a component in a much larger, darker plan. She gripped her hammer, ready to smash the core and the guildmaster's treachery along with it. But as she swung, the core erupted in a wave of shadow, and the ground began to dissolve into a bottomless abyss. As the darkness swallowed her whole, Alina heard Glenn's voice whispering that the festival of the new world was about to begin. Alina forced her eyes open as the darkness from the Chalk Tower began to recede into the festive night air. Below her, the Centennial Festival was in full swing with lanterns floating toward the stars. At the center of the plaza, a massive pillar of black light erupted from the ancient clock tower. Alina recognized the distorted figure floating within that light as Glenn, the guild master. Glenn held the dark god Silas' core aloft, its rhythmic pulsing shaking the very ground. Alina adjusted her glasses and summoned her massive warhammer with a flash of light. She muttered under her breath about how this world-ending event was definitely going to cause an administrative nightmare. With a single leap, she propelled herself across the sky like a blue comet. Glenn turned his hollow gaze toward her, a sad smile touching his lips. He shouted that the core would reset the timeline to a day before his daughter's death. Alina swung her hammer down, colliding with a shield of dark matter Glenn conjured. The impact sent a shockwave that blew out every window in the guild building below. Alina screamed that she couldn't let him reset time because she'd have to redo all of last week's filing. Glenn's shadow tentacles lashed out, pinning Alina against the clock tower's masonry. The stone cracked under the pressure as the dark god's power began to drain her mana. Suddenly, a flash of silver steel severed the tentacles holding her captive. Jade arrived on the back of a summoned eagle, his blade glowing with holy light. He told Alina to focus on the core while his party handled the defensive barriers. Alina kicked off the tower, her hammer beginning to glow with an intense, blinding white light. Glenn wept, claiming that a world without his daughter was a world not worth saving. Alina softened her gaze for a moment, acknowledging the pain of his loss. However, she told him that the living shouldn't be sacrificed for the ghosts of the past. She unleashed her ultimate skill, the final notice, mandatory overtime, engulfing the area in a massive hammer-shaped energy field. The energy hammer smashed through Glenn's final defenses, shattering the dark core into 1,000 pieces. The black light vanished, replaced by a shower of sparkling mana that looked like snow. Glenn fell from the sky, his corruption fading as he drifted toward the guild's balcony. Alina landed softly on the ground, her hammer dissolving into thin air. Jade approached her, offering a hand and a look of deep respect. He asked if the legendary executioner was finally ready to retire from heroics. Alina pulled out her pocket watch and realized it was already 3 in the morning. She screamed that she was technically working 18 hours of unpaid overtime today. They found Glenn on the balcony, alive but stripped of his magical power. He apologized for the chaos, admitting he had been blinded by his own grief. Alina handed him a stack of damage report forms she had magically produced from her pocket. She told him that his true penance would be completing all the insurance paperwork for the city's repairs. Jade laughed, realizing that Alina's bureaucracy was more terrifying than any dark god. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, the festival turned into a celebration of peace. Alina stood at her usual reception desk the next morning, despite having had no sleep. She placed a sign on her desk that read "No heroic quests during lunch break." With the threat gone and her paperwork in order, Alina finally sipped her coffee in perfect, peaceful silence. The legendary executioner had won her greatest battle yet, the right to go home on time.